Hey, Larken Rose here. Every statist, everyone who believes in government, every voter, Democrat, Republican, whatever, even libertarians, big L, not really libertarians. Every voter falls for what every political candidate and every political party pitches, which is generalized, nice-sounding fluff that conveniently doesn't mention the actual specific authoritarian immoral evil that is necessarily going to happen in their generalized nice sounding fluff agenda. And there's an infinite number of examples I could use, sadly enough, but I'll start with this. We want to deport these dangerous criminals. Okay? I'm pretty sure there aren't very many people who are like, no, I like dangerous criminals in my neighborhood. So the general fluff you just said sounds great. Who would be against that? Meanwhile, we're starting to see more and more stories of what that actually looks like in the real world, because what they're actually talking about is authoritarian violence used to control who can come in and out of the country and who can be in the country. Now, if you think for 2 seconds, which no political candidate wants you to do, it might occur to you, wait, I'm pretty sure murder's against the law here. When they say, we're going to deport murderers, instead of locking them up, you're just going to move them over there and have them be free in some other country? That's an interesting solution. I'm sure the people over there are going to love that. It's not. They want to point to that as the excuse to use authoritarian violence to control lots and lots of people. And now you're starting to see the stories come out of, oh yeah, you know, the criminal gang members who were shipped off to El Salvador slave camps. By the way, I think I said Guantanamo in a prior video because I can't keep track of all the various ways in which the authoritarian psychos are shipping off people to different places to be treated like crap in the name of stopping scary foreign criminals. But there's plenty of horror stories, and there's horror stories of people coming in and being detained for weeks, or people in here in the US legally suddenly being deported. Or we're going to whisk off all these scary, dangerous gang members, and whoops, we got 15 people so far. They can't even find out who all was on it, so that number is going to grow, who had no criminal record. And they're just guessing. There was no trial. There was no due process. There was no evidence. There was no proof. If you cheered for that, you cheered for the government forcibly detaining and deporting people based entirely on the government saying they're bad people and nothing else. No due process, no court hearing, no charges. And now you're starting to get the stories of, oh, here's this guy who's like a soccer champ here, and, well, he was caught in the roundup, and now he's in a slave camp in El Salvador. And the story of I mean, there's so many I can't even keep track. I think a woman from Canada was trying to come in, and she got detained by 2 weeks by ICE for nothing. She was just all the way Nazi, like held without charges, without being told why. Well, we're checking into stuff. Just the horror stories. Now, I should point out, this isn't exactly new. Like, the Border Patrol fascists have been doing this crap for a long time. It didn't just start under Trump. He's just more loudly bragging about it. But, of course, the mainstream media, formerly mainstream, that doesn't like him, is going to focus on the stories now that he's in. But the stories have been there forever, because as soon as you put authoritarian control over something, it's going to be corrupted, it's going to be abused. Duh. Have you never learned your lesson about anything ever? Oh, but what about human trafficking? One of the main reasons human trafficking is so lucrative and therefore so common is because of border controls. Just like one of the main reasons the cartels can make tons of money because drugs are so lucrative is because of drug prohibition by government, making it more dangerous, making it lucrative. So now you can make money illegally smuggling people across a border. So they do. And you get these nasty, violent cartels doing that, and people get murdered and stuff. Why does that happen? Because of border controls. If they could just walk in, they wouldn't be going to the cartels and paying them a bunch of money to try to smuggle them in. So you're already cheering for a thing that created the problem. But now we're seeing more and more of the stories. There was was he like a professor from somewhere, UK or something, and they stopped him and turned him away because, first of all, they searched his phone. No warrant, no probable cause, so I guess we're okay with throwing the Fourth Amendment out the window. And the Fifth, because making somebody show you their phone is forced confession. But you know the horrible things they found? A guy being critical of Trump. So they said, well, we think that's a national security. You don't get to be here. Really? You want to go that full Nazi? You will not badmouth mein Führer, or you cannot enter Germany. I mean the U.S. And more stories are going to keep coming out of people being treated like crap and put in cages and basically tortured while the border Nazis decide what to do about it or look into something. It's just ridiculous and idiotic. And like I said, it's not new. Trump didn't start this. There are horror stories going back a very long time of what border controls does, because it creates the ability to have power over people. And as soon as you have that, you have something that can be exploited. And now you can buy favoritism by way of corrupt, nasty criminal enterprises. Yeah, we'll let you in because this. So when those stories come out, you're getting specific examples of evil that are the result of the generalized, nice-sounding fluff that Trump advocates. We're going to get the scary, bad criminals out of here. Okay? Is that what's actually happening? No. Once in a blue moon that might happen, where you just relocated a dangerous person to somewhere else. He's still free. Or you stuck him in a slave prison somewhere. Oh, good. Now he's not free. He's in a slave camp. Was there a trial? Did he prove he was guilty of anything? No. Any due process at all? No. Did you charge him with anything? No. We just literally shipped people off to a slave camp. And the Trumpites will be, well, so you want scary criminals in this country? No, you dumbass. I want innocent people to not be victimized by authoritarianism that you're making excuses for, that you cheered for, that you fell for because it was described using general fluff terminology instead of describing the actual evil that was going to be inflicted on actual human beings, including a bunch of innocent people. Now, having bludgeoned the dumbass Trumpites and Republicans cheering for unconstitutional, immoral, authoritarian evil because it was described in a certain way, I don't want to give the left a break. Gun control. We just want reasonable gun control to protect our children and to reduce gun crime. Okay, there's some nice generalized fluff. What does that look like in real life? Bad people magically don't have guns. No, in real life, what does it look like? Exterminating almost 100 men and women and children in a little compound outside of Waco, Texas. That's what gun control actually looks like. Torturing and exterminating dozens of Americans based on the rumor that one of them had parts that could be used to convert semi-automatic firearms into fully automatic. Talking about the whole thing with the Branch Davidians in 1993. Okay, but that's just one scenario where the federal government tortured and exterminated a huge number of people based on the fluff-sounding gun control to keep us safe. And it wasn't just white guys they killed. It was people of different races, men, women, children, babies, old people. They were tortured and exterminated by the federal government. Why? Because gun control. And I could bring up the Weaver family and that standoff where they blatantly murdered a mother on her own property holding her own baby, murdered her on her front porch. Because gun control, because we want people to be safe. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Liberal, who cheered for gun control, do you have anything to say about the real world actual results of the stupid shit you fell for because it was described in fluffy, nice sounding language? And it isn't just those two either. Those are pretty famous because when it came out just how sadistic and evil the ATF is, a bunch of people got upset. Weirdly, most of those people are now Trumpites and cheering for authoritarianism in a slightly different direction and having other people, other innocent people, victimized by authoritarian bullshit. Which is why, if you ask, for example, a liberal, well, what do you actually want with this gun control? Let's say I have an AR-15, which I do. If you want that banned and I don't give it up, what do you want to have happen to me? Well, we need policies that, no, quit the fluff. What do you want to have happen to me if I have this illegal firearm that I've owned legally for many, many years, never threatened anybody, never shot anybody? What do you want to have done to me? Well, I think we need reasonable restrictions, fluff, bullshit. Do you want psychos with guns kicking down my front door and probably shooting me? Because that's a pretty likely outcome. By the way, if they ban AR-15s, I'm not giving mine up. I may hide it. I may do things to conceal it. And if they come to take it by force, I will shoot them. See, I can actually say the force that I actually advocate because it's always defensive and justified. It isn't status generalized fluff that's going to hit a bunch of innocent people. So the left does the same damn thing. Back to the right, the war on drugs. These are dangerous drugs. We just want to get these drugs off our streets. What? They're sitting on the streets? Yeah, they're sitting on the streets, and if we scribble some legislation, they won't be sitting on our streets anymore. Okay, how has that worked out so far? Well, great, other than the fact that it didn't at all stop drug use. It made it way more dangerous. It made the drugs way more potent and dangerous because people don't know what's in it because it's not an open market. It also created the Mexican drug cartels. It created the U.S. drug gangs that are in every major city by creating a very lucrative black market for something that's now illegal because of government. And that led to a huge amount of violence. So the fluffy thing of, well, drugs are bad and they have bad effects, let's outlaw them to make them magically not be there. Well, that sounds great, sort of, kind of, unless you know how to think. But all right, sounds like a good enough motive. What was the actual result? Way more corruption, way more violence, way more people overdosing. Worse in every single way by a huge amount. It's also freaking delusional and idiotic to think that even though there are illegal drugs in every single prison in the country, you think that just the right amount of authoritarian fascism will make them disappear from the whole country. They can't keep them out of their own prisons, but they'll magically make it disappear out of the country. Even while the CIA, part of the federal government, is the biggest drug runner in the world. Yeah, they're just going to disappear because Trump is going to really show those Mexican drug cartels we mean business. No, he's going to empower them. He's going to empower the DEA. He's going to do a bunch of authoritarian bullshit and make everything worse like government always does. But hey, you don't have to worry about the real world results of the stupid authoritarian shit you cheer for as long as you can just parrot the fluff. You don't have to worry about the young kid I met while in prison for not paying tribute to the federal extortion racket. The young kid, sweetest guy from Jamaica, sold pot to feed his family because didn't see any better option. In a cage for years, away from his wife and kids. Not violent, not horrible, not a threat to anybody, didn't hurt anybody, didn't threaten anybody. But your stupid fucking ideas put this nice guy in a cage for years. That was the reality of the stupid shit you cheered for. And you ignore it. You make excuses. Well, if he didn't, he shouldn't have broken the law. Shut the fuck up. The law shouldn't have been there and wouldn't be if dumbasses like you weren't cheering for authoritarian evil just because it was put in a nice-looking package that sounds pleasant and it sounds like it has good motives, even though it's authoritarian violence. Now, I went back to bashing the right. Let's go back to the left, shall we? We want free this and free housing and free food and free everything under the sun for everybody. Yay, that sounds so loving and compassionate of you. What pleasant sounding fluff. Where does the money come from? Well, if the government pays for it. Where does it get the money? No, I'm going to skip the fact that it prints it and then taxes account for the inflation that would happen. And the short, slightly oversimplified version is it steals it. How many people's lives have been ruined by the IRS? A huge number. It's so common, in fact, that for decades, there are sections in the Internal Revenue Manual that tell auditors what to do if the person seems suicidal, because that happens so often, because people kill themselves so often, because of the extortion racket that you compassionate liberals pretend isn't there to rob the shit out of tons of productive people to fund the bullshit socialist handouts that you want. But you don't want to mention the violence. You want to mention the generous giving, because nice sounding fluff. I can virtue signal because I'm in support of this nice sounding fluff. You're advocating actual violence against actual people that has destroyed huge numbers of lives. To those who've never heard the name Joseph Stack, look up the story of Joseph Stack and the IRS down in Texas. Read the letter he wrote. And then tell me how compassionate you are about supporting a monstrosity that robs everybody so you can feel good about giving away free stuff that was never yours. I'll give you the short version. He killed himself by flying his plane into the local IRS offices. It was many years ago. Look it up. So that's the reality of the compassionate liberals wanting to give free stuff to everybody. It destroys lives. It literally kills people. It makes them kill themselves. And then, of course, both the left and right, national defense, protecting the U.S., our troops. I support the troops. What are they actually doing? They're fighting for freedom. No, actually, like in real life, not the fluffy bullshit that you want to spout to pretend that you're supporting something good. What do they actually do? They act as mindless thugs of a ruling class and do warmongering and imperialistic violence all over the world constantly. That's what they actually do. They murder innocent people. That's what's actually happening down in Yemen right now. Oh, but these guys fired at our ships. First of all, our ships, not my ships. Second of all, where? Was that like in at the port off of Philadelphia? No, they couldn't reach that, could they? They fired at our ships that were right in front of them, invading their fucking country. Now, doesn't mean that aren't bad guys on the other side doing bad things. There are plenty of bad guys to go around in the world. Pretty much anybody who wants authoritarian control over anybody else is, to one degree or another, a bad guy. But the U.S. war machine goes around the world starting wars everywhere, and now Trump is very much escalating the rhetoric to try to start a war with Iran. Now, are the people who claim the right to rule Iran evil pieces of shit? Absolutely. Just like the people who claim the right to rule Israel are evil, warmongering pieces of shit. Iran has actually caused fewer wars than like the U.S. and Israel and almost anybody else. But they're still authoritarian scumbags. But Trump is trying to start a completely unnecessary war that will get lots of innocent people killed. That's what national defense actually looks like in the real world. That's what statism actually looks like in the real world. If you vote for anybody, if you advocate any government, it's a certainty that you will describe that using fluffy euphemisms. I just want to protect people's rights. Okay, that sounds nice. I want to protect people's rights too. How do you want to do that? By having a violent ruling class that robs everybody by violence in the name of protecting them, and have a giant militarized police force that harasses the hell out of people and then protects them. But not really. They never show up, and most of what they do is rob people. In fact, the protectors steal more than all other crooks combined, literally, not even including taxation. But it sounds nice. The political crap I advocate sounds like I'm caring, and either I want the innocent protected if I'm a Republican, and then I cheer for things that violently victimize the innocent on a regular basis, or I want the innocent taken care of if I'm a Democrat. Meanwhile, I'm advocating mass extortion and the violent control of finances and every possible choice anybody could ever have about anything. The government tentacles are in everything. You can't make a business. You can't choose to hire somebody. You can't choose to fire somebody. You can't choose to do anything without government permission, thanks to both sides. And it's, once again, I'm going to try to end on a positive note. Take some friggin' effort, I can tell you. But I'm going to try to end on a positive note. The fact that all these things are sold using the general nice-sounding, fluffy bullshit is still a good sign. Because it means people, right and left and everything in between, they want to think they're the good guys. They want to think that they're supporting something noble, and we're just keeping those scary, dangerous criminals out of the country. Yeah, you're also violently harassing and caging lots of not criminals and not bad people. Yeah, but we're going to make up an excuse for that so we can cling to the bullshit thing we're attached to. Or the political left doing the same thing. But the fact that people want to be able to use the fluff is because they want to think of themselves as good people advocating good things. If you vote for a master, you're advocating bad things. You probably don't even know it. Not only will you not admit it to other people, you won't even admit it to yourself. Which is why the vast majority of the time when I'm nice, not like I'm being right now, when I'm nice and patient and gentle and I'm using the candles in the dark method, and I ask people for the specifics of, well, what do you actually want to have happen? Whether it's border controls or gun control or whatever government program, what do you want to have happen to the people who don't go along with it? And they hem and haw and evade because they don't want to admit the violence they condone. They don't even want to admit it to themselves. They don't want to acknowledge that that's obviously part of what you're condoning. Free health care paid for by violent extortion. Yeah, but we don't want to look at that or think about that. Even in our own heads. We want to pretend that the nice-sounding fluff we advocate by way of government violence is good and loving and caring and righteous. So we're going to make sure we don't actually look at the specifics, the real world results of the authoritarianism that we condone. Every statist does that. Every single one. And the only good news is they have to do that because they're still trying to be good people. Now they're playing the willful blindness game of trying not to look too hard at the reality of what they condone, which Trumpites are doing very loudly right now, pretending they're not condoning widespread arbitrary authoritarian violence when they absolutely are. But the fact that they want to think of themselves, right and left, they want to think of themselves as the good guys. Okay, so there's some hope at least. They're not just out there saying, I don't give a crap what happens to anybody. Just violently dominate innocent people all over the place as long as I get what I want. Now, to some degree, that's might be what's actually happening in their subconscious, which is why they're not trying to look too hard at the reality of what they condone. But at least at some level, they're still trying to be good people, which is why I have things like candles in the dark to try to have a gentle way. Now, you don't see me do it because one of the rules is don't do it in public. Don't do it in front of an audience. So what you see me do in public is being brutal and nasty and blunt about the evil crap that people advocate. Verbally brutal, not physically brutal, like every single enforcer of the state always is. But yeah, in Candles in the Dark, it teaches a way to gently get people to look at the fact that the things they condone because of the nice sounding fluff doesn't actually match their own moral code and their own conscience. And that's why they get uncomfortable if you try to get them to be specific about what you condone. Okay, you want scary gang member out of the country. What if there's just some random guy, you don't know anything about him? He happens to be a nice guy. He's trying to come up here for work because he wants to work hard and feed his family. Do you want violence used against him? Well, hem haw, hem haw. Can do the same thing with gun control. Can do the same thing with any status stuff. The fact that people hem and haw and don't want to look at it is weirdly a good sign. Because it means they still have a conscience in there that doesn't want to be a cheerleader for evil. If you don't want to be a cheerleader for evil, then take 2 seconds to pause and take a step back and look at the literal reality, not the fluff, not the rhetoric, not the propaganda, the literal reality of these government policies that you're supporting. What do they actually do to actual people in the real world? Because if you're a decent human being and you take the time to actually look at the reality of what you voted for, unless you're an absolutely horrible human being, you're not going to like what you see.